We are Popcorn, Piss, and Vinegar, giving you a raw take on movies, television, and pop culture. My name's Chris.
Scott.
JB4.
And back for the second time, Scary Thoughts' very own Chad Lott.
Hey,
What's up? You got to pick up that mic, son.
Oh, wait. Does it go like that?
Yeah, it went,
That's how it
flaccid
goes.
on you.
I thought you had said it like that on purpose. I was like, oh,
No, apparently it went flaccid on you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there it is. How you doing, bud?
Great, man. How are you guys? It's always
Great,
good
man.
to see you guys.
It's fantastic having you back, man. We had a great time. We did, if you don't know, we did a review of Poltergeist last time Chad was here. It was both versions. We did the 1982 version and the 2015 version. But this time, we kind of enjoyed our format that we did with episode 200, where we just kind of sit back and bullshit. So I'm sure Chad is very tired of talking about horror movies all the time.
Yeah.
So we decided to just kind of talk a little bit about everything, at least things that are happening. So
We are very close to the devil's birthday, though, so I'm sure it'll come up a little bit.
and there's some things that we were talking about off air that I'm sure will creep, slither its way into this episode. So, I guess we'll kick this off. We were talking about The Conjuring earlier.
Can I say one thing?
Oh, you can say many things.
I want to go back to last week's show. We did like a little news thing, and I want to maybe correct that if I can.
Sure.
It has to do with a movie that John brought up, Brawl on Cell Block 99, I believe is what it was called.
Yeah,
And he recommended this to all our viewers, and usually I go with that, but I watched this immediately after we did the show, and it is maybe the most terrible thing I've ever seen ever.
So, in other words,
like I would watch.
Says the guy who liked Batman versus Superman.
so you want to segue into busting his balls instead of
fine.
doing anything fucking newsworthy.
I just
got you.
wanted to correct in case anybody was wondering how great that movie was. It's absolutely.
I just want to correct John's way of thinking and
Exactly.
opinion.
That's all.
Yeah. So in Scott's opinion, instead of that, just watch the Affleck version of Daredevil.
Correct. That's it.
Just put that on again instead of watching a really awesome.
I would watch Rogue One, Civil War, and what else? Oh, and the Suicide Squad on repeat.
Oh my God!
On repeat before I would watch this.
So in other
film
words, you
ever
would watch
again.
2 out of 3 good movies opposed to watching one bad one.
Whatever.
I understand.
Okay. Well,
Before we move on real quick, since he's got, because I doubt we're going to go back there. Since you brought up Daredevil, it has been announced that Vince D'Onofrio is returning as the Kingpin.
It did,
in
but they
the,
didn't.
That's good.
season.
They only didn't. They didn't say whether he was going to be a full season or not. So it's a little unclear of whether or not it's actually going to be him coming in for a full season and being the villain, or he might be just making an appearance and sort of like a one-off. Hey, they might revisit him at some point. So
well, that's what they did in season 2.
yeah. So this might be that sort of thing as well.
Okay.
Whoa!
Excuse me.
I'm glad you stepped away from the microphone. That way they won't know that you.
I don't want to
belched.
edit that out.
Yeah, either that or he could have gone back down to the bathroom again. We just got the
Easy.
half version this
Oh,
time.
let me bring that up
He
real
went.
fast.
Look, he went a couple of weeks ago. We filmed
No,
that
this-
show. He went downstairs and
Filmed.
had to hurl in the middle of the fucking episode.
There have been
so.
2 shows where I've gone out the night before and maybe had a few more than I should have. 2 shows the next day where I was completely and utterly miserable, hungover. The second show was this show 200, our big show 200. Hooray! The first show was the first time we had you on.
Making memories.
First
That's
time
it.
we had you on. I was like, oh, what a.
And
First
are you
of-
sure today's not the third one?
No, I'm
busting my balls.
I made sure I went to bed early. Oh no, you're
Okay. All right. Well, you got to let me defend myself here very quickly. Just,
please.
I'm going to.
I mean, I think you pretty much already did. I mean.
Oh, okay. Well, no. But for the people now
There are
going,
no
should I watch it
counterpoints.
or not? The first 20 minutes of this movie seem like a really sad Southern independent movie, like Monsters Ball, and then the rest of it is like off the rails, insane, like Tarantino got a hard on grindhouse shit.
Cool.
It's awesome, I think.
Insane like your drunk uncle at Christmas.
So
Please
Some
get him
people
out
like
my
that
house.
shit. Okay.
there you go.
There you go.
Jesus. All right, so let's go back, Chad. We were talking about The Conjuring, and you brought up something. You brought something up about that, about how I believe you said it was the second movie that looked way better than what it deserved to look like.
Yeah,
right?
when we covered it on our show, we did like Conjuring 1 and 2, and it was kind of as like more and more pieces of the franchise were being announced. So we were debating on whether or not we wanted to talk about it as an extended franchise and what it meant for horror to be a franchise. And one of the things that I think that's very successful about Conjuring is that the focus is on the heroes, the Warrens, and there's this whole like anti-heroification of villains, I mean, and
right.
Like perfect example is Freddy Krueger rapping with the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Once that happens, you're like, did we forget that he's a pedophile? I mean, I guess.
Yeah, did we forget that that he is the bastard of 1,000 men or some shit?
Yeah. It's like, okay, he gets a pass now. But what I like about it is like the focus is always on them trying to do the right thing, trying to save people. It's not like how badass the creature, the villain is. But the second Conjuring, it looks great, man. The way they film inside the house, they have these really unique camera movements. And one of the things that's so cool about it, and they do it in the first Conjuring too, when the family's moving in, it completely orients you to the geography of the house.
Right.
And so when things start to go weird and hallways start getting long, you've been primed to accept how the house actually is. And it's almost the opposite of what happens in The Shining, where the directions of the hallways and stuff don't make any sense. Like there's an actual floor plan in The Conjuring that gets explored. I just think it's very cool, and the color treatment of it is great. It's just it's a good looking movie.
So with that in mind, The Conjuring Part 1 and The Conjuring Part 2 were directed by a guy named James Wan.
Mm-hmm.
James Wan is going to be directing Aquaman for Warner Brothers. How do you think that style is going to transfer over to that movie? I mean, I know you hate superhero movies for the most part, but
yeah, I mean, we can walk out why I don't like superhero movies in general a little bit, but I think his version of Aquaman is probably going to be pretty cool looking, and it's going to be. I almost imagine that people are going to say that it's going to be the poor man's version of James Cameron's underwater Avatar. Like the idea of the three-dimensional space and fighting underwater and stuff like that will be so cool if it's done really well. And based on how he handles movement and depth perception in the other films, I think it's going to be really neat.
Yeah.
I have a question for Chad. And I don't see you guys doing this as a show, but you might. Have you seen Ouija 2, Origin of Evil?
I have not.
Okay. Ouija, the original film, is insufferably bad. Like, obviously, millennial catnip with no real substance. Or Ouija 2, the only reason I watched this is because I know Doug Jones, who makes a brief appearance as a wraith of some kind.
And he's his big known thing is he played Abe Sapien in
Hellboy.
In Hellboy,
and he's currently in Star Trek, the new Discovery. But it's a completely different movie. It's exceptionally well made, considering that it's in the Ouija series, and then that director has gone on to direct two horror movies that are on their Netflix originals. One is called Hush, which is a really good movie, and then Gerald's Game, which is the Stephen King story about a guy who has a heart attack. I've
been hearing that's good.
Yeah,
I've had a couple of people that have watched it and they say it's pretty good. But
Mike
I see you smiling over there.
You
actually like Gerald's Game.
I mean, I haven't seen it yet, but it's on my list to watch.
Gotcha.
I mean, it's a pretty frightening concept if you think about it.
Yeah,
fucking A.
So.
I thought the book was great, Gerald's Game, and it was always considered to be unfilmable by everybody. They were like, "Oh, what are you going to do? You're just going to have these like stupid Dune-style voiceovers with the protagonist of the film if you made it." But we don't know anything. I haven't seen it yet at all. But we do plan to cover it just because like I'm personally interested in successful adaptations and why they're successful. And this one's gotten so much praise that I'm just interested to see what we'll think about it.
Yeah, me too. The director's name is Mike Flanagan. Also, check out Hush. That movie surprised me. The asterisk, of course, is I also liked Brawl on Cell Block 99. But
I'll give you one.
But everybody, thanks. We all have one, right? Even Chad, because I watched Boo Medea special, and I was like, I just don't get it. But the guys on Scary Thoughts liked it. So we all have our kind of like guilty pleasures.
Oh, totally. I mean, because like tastes are so. I mean, the classic example is like if you're drawing a nude figure in a drawing class, everyone's going to see different shadows and angles.
Right. Totally.
But you could still be really fucking wrong, like you could come by and have drawn some grotesque abortion of a piece of art. But for some reason, I think when you have no expectations and something is actually pleasing in a way. I mean, I had no expectations of The Conjuring or
Right.
The Conjuring 2. I thought they were going to be really terrible, and having that 0 point sort of allows you to be a little more generous, or at least find things that are successful. It's almost like when you listen to an album and like there's a hot single, but the album sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now let me ask you this, because you had said that you had low expectations of The Conjuring. Does this tie into what you guys talk about in Scary Thoughts, where you said that even terrible, shitty, awful horror movies still like look beautiful now?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, any film these days, like there's so many people sitting on $80,000 film degree debt, and there's so much talent, and kids start very young, like making YouTube channels and stuff like that. So I think that it's like anything. You look at the UFC, like anybody in the UFC now could kick the fucking face off of anybody in UFC 1, and it's just like culture accelerates, and then technology accelerates, and horror has really become codified in interesting ways lately, where it's like everybody knows you have to watch Hitchcock, everybody knows you have to watch Kubrick, you have to watch these masters of horror, and so many of those guys are on podcasts now just talking about what they're doing and their techniques and how they're doing it. So if you're savvy, you're watching and learning.
Well, to add in another factor, what you're talking about is I think marketing also accelerates, and people now are seeing these superhero movies, and now you're seeing resurgences of large franchises, in particular Star Wars. Those things have a specific look, and I think the thing with it is those visual cues, even those visual tropes, are now kind of trickling down into horror as well. There's this kind of codified thing for the audience that says, okay, well, look, we can shoot this and do something like that, even to the point to where now things are crossing over. I mean, have you seen the trailer for the new X-Men movie that's coming out, the New Mutants? I mean, it looks like a fucking horror movie the way it's done out in the trailer. So
yeah, and then all that stuff kind of raises the tide of the genre. But what you're really looking for, and what we're very interested in on the show Scary Thoughts, we're looking for that fish that's crawling on shore, like that new thing.
Yeah,
we're looking for that to creep out, and that's the thing that I'm personally excited about. The big dirty secret of me on Scary Thoughts is I don't watch hardly any new horror at all. I'm not a horror completist. There are great horror podcasts where people just will watch everything that comes out and love it, and I have a lot of appreciation for that sort of thing, but I'm so fucking busy, man. I don't have time for that.
Dude, I know how you feel.
But you guys still have a contemporary quotient. Like, you just did Get Out recently, and that's fresh.
Well, Mark watches a lot more than I do, and so a lot of the choices, he'll usually advance things and kind of preview them. Like, we're not very much interested in covering a crappy movie like Leprechaun 2 for the sake of Leprechaun 2. We're not going to cover but we're also a show that covered Forrest Gump and Boo Medea,
right.
Well, to be fair, Forrest Gump was an April Fool's joke.
Yeah,
so.
it's actually a movie that I think is a successful movie.
Yeah.
I actually like it.
Right.
And then Boo Medea gave us an opportunity to talk about one, black horror is kind of a primer into Get Out when we did our episode a little bit later, but also what it means to have an idea and execute it really fast. So that's kind of what horror is in general. Like, in some ways, Boo Medea is an actually perfectly produced horror movie. It came from an idea. They're making fun of, Chris Rock has a joke where he's like, oh, the new Boo horror movie is going to do better than my movie, or the new Medea horror movie is going to do better at the box office than my movie is. And then Tyler Perry's like, what a great idea. And 6 months later, that movie's real. And
it does better.
And it does better. It crushes Chris Rock's movie at the box office, which is crazy. And then you can see a similar thing with Kevin Smith's Tusk. You can actually listen to the episode where they come up with Tusk, and the movie, I took my wife to see it, and she was legitimately mad at me afterwards. So that's all I'll say about the quality of that film. But for creators, people like all of us, we're all in bands and you guys are in bands, you make movies. We have this creative urge that I think is important for. We're like spirits riding around in these monkey spaceships, these primate bodies. And there's something about creativity that lets us touch the numinous. And I think when we see these examples of these films that somebody just went for it and it happened. They created a thing and it's in the world. Even when it sucks, if it's auteur driven, like, it's really impressive. So Boo Medea is Tyler Perry's vision. Tusk is Kevin Smith's vision. It's not this nightmare hodgepodge of focus groups built for the Chinese market.
Like Mother.
Or any of that garbage. I haven't seen that yet. But
sort of the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you've only, as far as Scary Thoughts is concerned, and I'm telling you, if you haven't listened to it, Chad and Mark, I mean, they're just on point. And I mean, it definitely helps to watch the movie before you listen to their show, because it's spoilers, they break it down, and I mean, deep analysis of these movies. I mean, you've only ever stirred me wrong once. I mean, I've watched the stuff that I've listened to, I've watched or I've seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the only one that you ever stirred me wrong on was the Neon Demon. I wanted to throw it on my lawn and fucking drive it over with my car.
So,
fucking piece of shit.
there is a movie similar to that, Neon Demon. That's the movie about where.
No, Neon Demon is
it's horror in the modeling world.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, wrong movie.
It can be viewed as a
what you're talking
horror
about.
movie, but not. It's kind of like. Would you say horror is kind of like almost like a metaphor in a way?
I mean, that director is one of those dudes who just have the feeling like he'll use genre as a tool to do his thing.
Yeah,
right.
And so it's definitely horrific. There's cannibalism. There's potential witchcraft. Who knows? But it's a really polarizing film, and. He says that he thinks if half the audience hates it and half the audience loves it, that means it's a successful piece of art. And there are plenty of examples where that's true.
Yeah.
But if you're aiming for that, I think you can't just bum out half your audience and, offer that as proof of your brilliance, which I think is part of what he's doing. But yeah, I don't know. That is our most downloaded episode. It's other than Stranger Things, which is of course everybody loves that.
Yeah, right.
But Neon Demon was before we ever did any promotion on the show. It was like one of our first episodes, and it continues to get like I'll look at our analytics sometimes, and there'll be like 250 downloads in one day for no reason for that show. And so
we should talk about that next week.
Yeah, right. Neon Demon. I'll jump out the fucking window.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I like that filmmaker. I'm like one of the 10 people that liked Only God Forgives.
Yeah, I couldn't hang with it.
Yeah,
yeah.
But it's interesting, yeah, and because I do think that Neon Demon was him adopting a genre, which I guess I don't know if like perfume commercials are a genre, but I think he went into the modeling world. And I actually have a client. It's called Behind the Chair. And they're hairstylist magazine, but they're always looking at. I've worked in that environment for very short periods of time, and it seems to me that he like adopted that genre and was like, I'm going to completely eviscerate it and destroy it by adding this vector of horror. Because how often do you see that in a perfume commercial? Never. So it was interesting. It's not my favorite. I mean, everyone's favorite, like the popular favorite is Drive, which is a great film.
That's my favorite of all his movies.
Oh, it's perfect.
And what's going on in that film is so interesting is that he's hidden traditional masculine values in this weird art film. The reason why that character's so rad is because he doesn't talk and he just beats the fuck out of people who need to be beaten the fuck out of.
But,
exactly.
Yeah. And they're beating the fuck out of in a way that's real. Because he gets idealized in the romantic thing, and then when he, spoiler alert, crushes the fuck out of a dude's skull, I mean, you don't really see it, but you hear it, and you see lots of...
That's the best way.
Oh, yeah. And then you see that you see the romantic interest suddenly understands, oh, this dude's a fucking monster.
Yeah.
This is not what I think he is at all.
Yeah, that film technique of it's so interesting how everybody's like, oh, you shouldn't smoke sheet, right? Whatever, but no one does it. There's a horror equivalent or an action equivalent where everybody knows if you don't show the thing, it's more horrifying.
Right,
dude. Braveheart when they're pulling out his intestines, that still makes me cringe,
it's
man.
Super cringy, and it's and this is. I mean, I'm leaping around here, but this is why I think. As the Alien franchise walks out, the more you see of the xenomorph, the less scary it is.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see huge franchises violate the rule that everybody knows is real.
Right. Yeah. But at the same time, I think when you get a bigger budget and this is why Aliens is one of my favorite horror movies of all time, because it's not a horror movie, so
That's
it's an
action movie.
But that's what I love about it, is because with fear, the next stage is either you overcome to it or you die by its hand, right? Like and what Alien did was introduce this creature, and Aliens was like, well, if I show it, then it's not a horror movie anymore. So what if I have a fucking bunch of them, and then it's just straight up war? Like, you've computed that this thing is dangerous and deadly, and now it's just
that was
visceral fight.
That was the tagline of the movie when it came out in '87. This time it's
a war.
Yes, I mean,
and to me, that is the perfect arc for a horror is the fight or the conflict. So anything after that tried to resurrect its mystery and terror, I was just like out.
Well, it's really the parallels that can be drawn between Aliens, James Cameron's sequel, and the first Terminator movie. There's a lot of parallels between those two movies. I mean, they're both obviously action movies, but they have this dark, almost turned on horror. I mean, when I saw Terminator the first time on HBO, at the end when she gives him the whole "you're not terminated, fucker," but when she burns him and burns him inside of the tanker truck. And then all of a sudden, like, the junk pile, like, and there's this huge metal skeleton that comes out. I'm like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I was, like, probably, like, maybe 12 years old when I saw that right where that line was, right before you stop being really scared of shit. You know, but it was kind of still terrifying. And there's a lot of parallels, I think, between Terminator 1 and Aliens. And all due to James Cameron.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like, the Terminator is essentially a cybernetic Jason Voorhees.
Yeah.
You know, it just walks towards you and won't stop and wants to murder your ass for having sex, you know?
Yeah.
It's a sci-fi.
Or using the bathroom.
It is a sci-fi Mike Myers or Jason Voorhees.
Right. Yeah.
That's absolutely what it is. And it's funny because you guys had... I can't remember the context it came up in, but to me... I think you guys were talking about in Scary Thoughts how you're looking for the next horror thing, you know, where the tadpole sprouts legs and starts coming out of the water and evolving. And my first thought was, I think that's where science fiction is coming in. You know, like, to me, the difference between science fiction and horror is a lot blurrier than most people are programmed to think.
Well, dude, look, Black Mirror is a prime example.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a horror show for the most part. I mean, it just goes to show you what happens when you become reliant on technology, and it's that kind of prophetic show like the Twilight Zone, which so many episodes of that dealt with a nuclear scare and all that different stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's essentially what it is. It's the Twilight Zone for our generation, or for this age, rather. I wouldn't really call it a generational thing, because I've seen people who are in their 50s that have watched Black Mirror, and they're like, this is fucking incredible.
And there's 21-year-olds that think The Twilight Zone is one of the coolest shows ever made.
No
still,
doubt.
You
No
know?
doubt. It's still a great show.
That's where I've been most interested in consuming stories lately, is in, like, dystopic sci-fi. I think dystopian sci-fi is doing the job of horror now, and because it's addressing the anxieties of the time. You know, that's what horror, you know, when you look at the horror boom of the late 70s, early 80s, it was largely manufactured by people who had been through the Vietnam War. So you see this huge burst of grotesquerie, you know, and so a lot of people didn't see what these people saw, so these artists were making them see what they saw. And it spilled over in creative ways.
Right. And it evolved with movies like Poltergeist, where you see this grotesquerie, and they say, okay, well, we've been through that phase, so now let's carry it to the suburbs. And you see that kind of shit, and it starts growing from there.
Yeah.
You know, but I think that's the thing also. You have this whole nostalgia thing right now with horror movies, but there's a lot of great ones. One that I really enjoyed that you guys recommended, It Follows. I thought that was a fantastic movie. I loved it. It was really good. I enjoyed that one.
It had a cool concept, and then horror is so good when it's very tight to its concept. Like, you open a box and a demon comes. You know, you fuck somebody near a lake and a dude comes to kill you. Like that, like the really tight mechanism of what the sins that people, you know, perpetrated, like, and then are, you know, assaulted for. But and then the job of horror, I think, is also to make people think about death in a way that the culture doesn't. And I think that's why it's so enduringly popular. Is like people, when they see it, they sort of like confront these little deaths, and that's what's interesting about science fiction. I think why it's so terrifying now is that it's making you confront like societal death. Like, because you look at Blade Runner 2049. I mean, that shit is horrifying looking.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. What did you think of Blade Runner 2049?
I loved it.
Yeah,
I thought it was incredible.
fantastic.
Yeah, it has to be seen in the theater. It has to be seen in IMAX. And like very rarely do I say that about any film, because I mostly watch films on my laptop, and I could give a fuck. I know that people are like really like crazy about it, like, oh, the theater. But to me, the theater is such an awful experience now. Where you have just the mouth breathing masses of just riddled up fucking retards that just dump themselves into the theater and just shove food in their mouths. Like it bums me out, so I'm just happy to have my crisp laptop with my headphones.
Well, our big thing that we have now is now they're starting to update these theaters, and the theaters down here locally, we're getting what's called a Dolby Atmos system, and it's been installed. Well, we have one that's installed in the 2 AMC outlets that we have. One of those outlets is actually getting 5 of those theaters. And what I find is better, though, going to that theater, the higher price tag gives you the better experience. But the thing that's really great is that it creates separation and also weeds out the riddled up retards from getting into the theater. So
but
it's way better.
If every ticket is that price, then there is going to be, like, if you can only see, let's say bad example, but good example. If you can only see Blade Runner in Dolby, then anybody, including everyone you just mentioned, is going to go to that theater, which means regardless if it's $17 or $10, they're going to spend the money and see Blade Runner.
But what I'm saying is that it creates separation.
It does
like you
create
got
it.
walls, like the way they built that theater, like you have a barrier wall in front of you and
gotta
behind you.
sit next to the guy on his cell phone flipping through.
Well, tell him to fuck off. That's what I do.
And then he'll turn around and shoot me.
No, he won't turn around and shoot you at all. You punch him in the fucking face if he makes a move at you. It's bullshit.
Well,
dude, you got to grow nuts in these theaters. I got to the point, look, my fiance crawls under the seat. We went and saw a movie, some comedy movie she wanted to go see. What was it? Bad Moms, I think it was.
Okay.
So I take it for the team. She goes and sees my shit. I go and see her shit. So we go and see Bad Moms and all of that stuff and everything. We're sitting in the theater. They got a group of little girls that are down in the front, like
little
talking
girls
and gabbing and shit.
Different than
so
full-size
it's
adults.
the same thing. So I stand up. It's 8 of them. So I stand up and I said, hey, shut the fuck up. Now, she wanted to crawl under the seat, but guess what? There was no talking for the rest of the movie. Another guy, I went and saw Wonder Woman. He decided that he was going to commandeer somebody's seats. Big dude. He was going to commandeer somebody's seats and convince them that on Snapchat, he is the owner of the seat. So the little girl couldn't defend herself to get her seats. So I looked at the fucking guy and I told him, I said, dude, look, I don't care if it's on Snapchat. I don't care if you have it flying on the back of an airplane in the sky right now. She's got the receipt for the tickets. Get up and move, dude.
It's assigned seating, which is one of the big pluses of the Dolby Atmos. You can show up 5 minutes before the movie, walk in, sit down, and then the sound tends to blast everybody into paying attention. You're not hearing the the rappers for 20 minutes and shit. So
now, a movie like It Follows, I want to watch that at my house. I don't want to go to a movie theater to see that. But Star Wars and Marvel and DC and Blade Runner 2049, these kind of sonic and visual experiences, I'm shelling the money to see that shit.
Yeah, like superhero movies, the one thing I will say positive about them, excuse me, is they're like rides. You go on a ride, it's pretty fun.
Yeah.
And I definitely can't hate on it for those reasons. So to go see it in a film, I could see bringing your 12-year-old kid to whatever, and it's a super blast. I thought Blade Runner was on another level because just the texture of everything. Like, you have to see it that large just to see the rust and the dirt and the grime on everything. I mean, it's an absolutely gorgeous movie.
that'll be my first 4K. If I have a 4K TV, but I have no 4K source material, that's going to be the first.
Oh, another thing, too, is that they announced also that Blu-rays now are going to start coming in Atmos format.
Yes.
So you can actually get an Atmos receiver at your house and do Atmos decoding. Fuck yes.
I'm going broke.
Fuck yes. And believe it or not, they're affordable systems. I mean, I looked at the whole Atmos system to put at your house. It's only $5,000. I mean, but what I'm saying is, man, look, you got a lot of people, man, that go out there and they're pumping $60,000 into a home theater system.
Right.
What I'm saying is, if you want to make an investment in something,
yes,
and you want a home theater thing at your house to give yourself a close to a theater experience, all of this money that Scott's going to save not going now. That puts that.
Yeah, because I don't want to spend $20 a ticket to go
so
see.
So you could put the
movie.
$20 aside, and $5,000 is an attainable thing if you want a theater experience at your house. I don't think that's too crazy.
No, it's for the quality. No, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. If you buy a decent surround sound system and you buy a decent TV, you're talking about $3,500.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't think that's too much out of range.
Yeah.
So
I think virtual reality in general is totally oversold. I think it's going to be fucking decades before it's anything worthwhile. But I think a technology they could land their hands on really soon is a really great in-home VR headset theater experience. I mean, I would drop like $300, no problem, on something. I just put it on my head. It makes it like I'm watching a giant screen. It's really crisp, has great sound deadening headphones. Like, that's what I hope happens. Just plug that, because it's almost what I do with my laptop, just to have that experience but be more immersive. I think would be, I mean, I would buy that.
Just a very brief side quest here. Inarritu, the guy that made Gravity and then the Revenant.
Yeah, the Revenant.
He's getting an honorary Oscar for a VR movie that he's made that they were showing at con, but it was only one person could watch it at a time.
I
You had to
remember
put a VR headset. They're giving him an honorary Oscar for it. It's like a 6-minute film, but they're saying that it's the new standard for VR. So
that's great. So Nutsack Jim, instead of ripping off Fern Gully, now we can go rip off fucking Inarritu. That's fucking awesome.
There
I'm
you
down
go.
with that.
Hey, I mean,
So that's good.
Rip off from the best.
I just don't. As far as VR goes, though, I want to be told what to watch. Like, if I'm watching Star Wars, let's say, for instance, and it's in VR, that means I can look all around and see everything that's happening, all the action. But the important action might be in front of me.
Well, that's
but
what
instead I'm looking around and not paying attention to what I should be paying attention to.
That's why multiple views are awesome.
Yeah, I don't want to
guess,
look,
but I want to be. I want to be fed the story. I don't want to miss the story.
If I'm watching Star Wars in VR, I want to be sitting in an X-wing fucking cockpit. If I'm doing VR and Star Wars,
I'm not even talking about as far up as VR, like an actual immersive VR. I just want like a really great, like what you're saying, just looking at the screen.
Right.
Like, I don't need to look over and look.
So
at
you
Jar
want
Jar
something
Binks
that gives
and
you
all.
at least within your periphery.
Right.
Is basically what you're saying.
If you could mimic the effect of an IMAX thing at home with like a headset, that's kind of what I'm after.
There you go.
Yeah. I don't need to look right and look.
I
at
don't
an
think
Ewok
that's far
fucking or
off.
something.
I don't think.
I agree with Scott.
especially
Yeah.
like what was it? Facebook did that big Oculus announcement a few weeks back where they're like $200.
Yeah.
If anybody's gonna make it happen, it'll be those guys.
Let me put it to you this: I think a VR movie would be more analogous to a ride, and the superhero genre lends itself to it. I'll put it to you this way: Infinity Wars. If there's like a big throwdown, I would love the idea of being able to watch it 6 times, looking at different fights. You know what I mean? Depending on what direction I'm looking in.
Right.
That would be. It'd be fucking rad. It would be. And I know what you're saying right now. You didn't like Civil War or whatever.
No,
I think you'd walk away going, "All right, that was pretty cool."
I don't want to have to make the choice though to go. What is the most important thing I need to see right now to take away from the movie? Because if I only get to see it once or twice, then I might go, that movie was kind of lame. And then you might go, but wait, did you watch over there when they did the thing? Or did you see? I'm like, oh, no, I was looking at this other thing.
There's probably some natural urges, though. Like, like if somebody whips out a titty or beats someone's ass in a bar, your eyes are just going to be drawn to it.
Oh, totally.
But what if that wasn't the thing I should have been looking at?
I mean, I don't know what else is
Guess
there.
you'd have repeat business. That's it.
That's it. I saw the movie 20 times because I was supposed to be looking at something else, but I just watched the titty every time. So you talk about the good side of superhero movies, for their production value and visuals and it having this kind of theme park type allure to it and all. But what do you think of the bad side of these movies?
Well, so all of what I'm about to say basically comes from Alan Moore and Grant Morrison, who I think who I think are the two most successful comic book writers. I mean, there's a strong argument for Neil Gaiman and some of the other classic guys.
Yes.
But for me, those are my guys. Those are my two guys, and they both have in common this belief in the supernatural power of creating art and the idea that these archetypes drive humanity. And I think that this whole like everything dark future, like it's robbing people of these heroic archetypes. Like when you make Superman sort of a dirtbag,
Yep.
you know, when you muddle all this stuff, you know, it's not too hard to see how you end up with fucking Donald Trump, who is essentially a fucking anti-hero billionaire to some people, you know? And like, and I wasn't really like so much on this kick. Like I just thought they sucked. And for a while, I was like, these movies just suck. They're just terrible. They're terrible. And I never could put my finger on it. And then I went and read Grant Morrison's take on Superman. And it's this bubbly, weird, fun, bright, Jack Kirby-esque sci-fi tale. And you're like, man, there's a hero.
The cover to that book is awesome.
Yeah.
It's him just sitting on a cloud looking down at humanity.
Yeah.
It's really fucking
It's
awesome.
super good. And
No pun intended.
Yeah. But Grant Morrison wrote this book called Super Gods, which is sort of his treatise on like what our heroes should be doing to us. And you know, and then last year I read a few books like these like neuroscience books about neuroplasticity, and there's this concept that when you're immersed in reading something, you're immersed in stories, you start to take on the characteristics of the protagonist of the film. And I think it's not overselling it to say that you should be very careful about what characteristics you're taking on if you want a certain type of life. So you watch all these bummer, shitty movies about depressing drug dealers and all this stuff. Pretty soon, you have a whole society of morally flexible, I'm going to get mine bullshit people. I mean, just look at the fucking hip hop culture. You know, like like you see this dark downturn, and then the late 80s, early 90s, you sort of saw this more upbeat sort of deal going on. And now you see, and I'm not even talking about violence, I'm talking about this craven, corny social media entrepreneurism that's all the rage right now in hip hop.
That's not only hip hop, dude.
Well, just everywhere.
That's across the whole board of music.
Yeah, we were talking about Run the Jewels last night. So to me, like at a party, I was talking about this, and to me, Killer Mike and LP represent what's possible, and maybe even what's possible in superhero movies. They've created something great. Killer Mike is sort of positioning himself to be a role model, to be a cool guy. He's still talking about guns and fucking bitches and smoking weed and all that stuff because that's where we are as a culture, and it's great, and I like all that stuff. But there's like a heroic quality to it, and definitely you could look into superhero movies and see all that stuff. But to me, when you've made Superman dark, you've done a disservice to the archetype of Superman.
Yeah.
My argument has been from the beginning, and these guys will tell you, I have no problem with Superman living in a dark world. But the thing with it is he has to be the guy who's better than it.
Right.
There's some things in Man of Steel that I actually liked. But some of the things that I didn't enjoy, and it was one of the big things, is that his parents actually make him question who he should be saving and who he shouldn't be saving, because Zack Snyder does a very poor job of showing that these people are scared for their child. And he's trying to project modern society upon the mythos of Superman, which half of it will be kill him and the other half will be, exalt him.
Right.
But the thing with it is that when you go through all of this bullshit, Superman, you kill him off in the second movie, and then all of a sudden he's got candlelight vigils. Well, hold on, motherfucker. You didn't establish this in your movie. So, yeah, I agree with you. Superman is the guy. He's the messianic character. He's the ultimate. I mean, he's Moses and Jesus, man. I mean, that's his thing.
The flip side of it, though, is that Marvel actually does. I mean, Captain America is pretty much what we wanted Superman to be, right? I mean,
especially the second movie, the Winter Soldier, which I think remains still as one of Marvel's finest movies.
I mean, even the first one, he's still the scrawny kid. He's just got a lot more muscle in his monkey vessel. But I'm getting the vibe that you don't think that Marvel is nailing it in terms of.
I mean, Marvel does some things really well. I mean, I think Tony, what's his name, is Iron Man is great. Like Robert Downey Jr.'s comic timing adds a lot of style to this billionaire character. It's really interesting to think about like what someone would be like if they had that much power.
Right.
And I think you could definitely find what I'm looking for in this version of Captain America, and even to a lesser extent Thor. Like I'm despite all my shitting on all this stuff, I'm really looking forward to Ragnarok.
They're saying this movie's great. They're saying it's really good.
Yeah, it looks really fun. And then Thor, he tracks pretty closely to what Thor is in mythology, especially in Neil Gaiman's book, Norse Gods. Like it's his version. Neil Gaiman's version of Thor is the comedy version of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's Thor, and it's just it's so cool. This idea of this, impossibly powerful super bro that you wouldn't mind hanging out with. It's just
which we're going to see in Aquaman, but probably a majority of us wouldn't want to hang out with him.
No, see, I feel like I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the goatee, but Aquaman seems like the fucking superhero Dan Bilzerian to me.
Like he listens to Nickelback without question. That's like when I seen.
And then like there's no arguing with him. He's like, bro, this fucking rocks. and you're like, I don't know, man. It's like, turn it up. Like, that's his whole thing.
Yeah, I saw the Chinese trailer for Justice League, which is going to come out in a few weeks here, and he's Aquaman apparently has been punched and he's sailing through the sky, and Cyborg grabs him by his collar as he's flying by, and Cyborg says, "The ride's not over yet." And Aquaman looks at him and goes, "My man!"
Yeah. It's
going to be so fucking horrible.
I mean, it's fun. And then, like, all this said, I'll still go watch these movies. Because you grow up with these characters and you see them. I even think, like, the elements of Batman and Superman are interesting. Like, yeah, these gods knock people around. What happens when a building falls over? 2,000 people are killed, I think it's interesting. But what I think, when you have, like, a character like Bruce Wayne, behind every great fortune, there's a great crime. Like, he's got bodies too, so, and especially there's something about that sort of idea that he's going to like fix things. It just reminds me of like actual real life Ben Affleck, who's up there fucking white knighting it up against, Sam Harris. Meanwhile, he's doing creepy shit and, casting crowd shit, like that sort of thing. I don't know, like why I'm so bothered by it.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Relative to a lot of what you guys talk about in Scary Thoughts, and what's really great about the podcast for our listeners out there is they'll take a film and they'll analyze it within the context of what's going on at any given time it was made. So it really ends up becoming a snapshot of the time that it's made, even though I never compute that when I'm watching a film. I'm just... if I do, it's totally subconscious. Like, oh, I was alive for that time, or Invasion of the Body Snatchers is a metaphor.
Well, you kind of look
at
it as you remember the big headlines of that time when you're watching these things, but to drill down, like a lot of the '80s stuff you watch, with the Satanic Panic thing. I never think of that stuff, but it's so present during that part. That kind of subculture of all that stuff, playing the records backwards and hearing evil messages and shit. That was all big shit at the time.
I almost want to hear them take down Leprechaun 2 just to see how they retroactively give it some kind of.
If y'all do context. Leprechaun, dude, do Leprechaun in the Hood. That's the one. That's the one we want, dude.
I mean,
fuck part 2.
Well, I think I've used that still of the Leprechaun with the bong like 4 or 5 times on our social media account. I mean, I like that movie. That movie. It's just so stupid.
Oh, yeah. What about Tales from the Hood? Do y'all have any plan on doing that one at some point?
Probably not.
Really?
Yeah.
I like that movie.
Like
That's great.
One of the things, too, about it is, like, Mark, our schedule is pretty incompatible, and we put a lot into each show, so we have to be pretty careful about what we pick.
Right.
Because otherwise, we've just flushed an episode down the toilet.
Well, my original point was that I think it's going to be interesting, like, post Weisenstein and Affleck to see Weinstein, right? Weisenstein.
Who that guy is?
Does it even matter anymore? The point being is, I think that there's going to be a wave of cinema that's going to. I mean, I don't even know who to hero worship anymore. Like I'm just like, when is the Harrison Ford bombs going to drop? You know what I'm saying? Like that. Like there was this article that I wrote, and I don't know if you've read it. this woman talks about how Elie Wiesel, who survived the Holocaust and is the sort of gold standard, he's a Nobel Peace Prize winning standard bearer of, what's right and wrong. He grabbed her ass in a photo shoot when she was 19, but he thought she was 14 because that's how old she looked. So what's intimated there is that there's a lot of skeletons in that closet, which it's like, fuck. If that guy is a creeper, who
Here's the easiest thing,
up.
and I quit doing this 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Stop worshiping them and
Right.
stop giving a fuck about their opinion.
Well, sure.
Be entertained. And if it turns you off that much, I mean, I'll be honest with you. Harvey Weinstein, guy's a piece of shit.
Oh,
but I'm not
totally.
going to stop watching Kevin Smith movies
Oh,
just
no,
because
no,
he
no, no.
produced them.
No.
I mean, that's it.
I mean, it's so, the Weinstein thing is so interesting because it's so complex,
It is.
right? Because it's like, you're like it or not, this is capitalism, and our dollars are our life force. And when you pay
Right.
somebody like that, dude, you're essentially trading your life force to this fucking ghoul for this piece of artwork that he's peddling to you. You're buying his product. It's not much different than if you found out like Colonel Sanders was fucking kids and you kept buying chicken. There is a moral chain there, right?
Right.
And I think it's even why we need these like archetype heroes more, is because everyone's going to let you down on a long enough timeline. Everyone's a creep,
Right.
And, like you go like, Martin Luther King Jr. Pretty strong evidence that he beat hookers. Gandhi was a fucking racist. Like these are real things that are very uncomfortable for people. And if you're interested in looking at the world as it is, you have to see that stuff. And what I've been really thinking about a lot lately is, does the artwork stand on its own against the person? Like if you didn't know anything about Bill Cosby and you listened to himself, that's still a masterpiece.
Oh, no
Oh, yeah.
doubt.
You know what I mean?
It's comedy
doubt.
So you get to this point where lately I've been thinking about it is, if you steal that masterpiece and you stop funneling money into that entity, that seems to be like the proper move. Like you can still enjoy that thing or appreciate it for its merits. It's like watching a Mayweather fight. You know what I mean? That's a fucking woman beater right there, right? And you can go steal all those fights online,
Yep.
but he is still a master.
Yep.
And
No
it's
doubt.
and to me a joy to watch fighting. And can you separate? Like when I mean, this is almost like the Catholic argument for original sin. Like everyone's a fucking dirtbag.
Right.
So where do you move forward? Like, I mean, there's certain lines you would draw, but I mean,
You'd hope.
Yeah, but then you like with that what you just said about this guy puts out this artwork, and to separate that guy from the artwork to be able to enjoy the artwork. Well, to get, especially if it's a good piece of art, to get that good piece of art, he had to pull from some place inside of himself.
Yeah.
And that part of himself may have been that dark, shitty thing that he did to whoever to get this beautiful piece of art. And then you go, well, I don't think you can separate. I think they're so hand in hand.
I mean, I think you're totally right on. I mean, the forest system, freeways, and the Volkswagen all come from Nazis.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I mean, do you want to give up freeways in the forest system? I mean,
Exactly.
the whole idea of protecting landscape from industrialization is a blood and soil argument. That's fucking Nazi shit.
I mean, dude, look at the fucking XFL, dude. That's a piece of shit to the fucking face of football. But hey, we got the rear camera from Vince McMahon, dude.
We did.
Yeah. So I mean, we got the rear back shot to where when I'm watching LSU play, I can see what's happening behind the fucking line of scrimmage.
Well,
so I mean, there you go.
I'll tell you what.
The overshot too, didn't like that drone overshot? They did that too, didn't they?
Okay.
The XFL.
Well, here's
The
even
XFL hung the string on
Right.
it, and they have the camera that goes and gives you the back shot, Because Vince McMahon, I mean, I can't compare him to Nazis, but I mean, do I want to give up fucking LSU football or, well, I've already given up the NFL, but I mean, do I want to give up fucking college football because the XFL sucked?
Well, dude, I mean,
So-
this might even be more morally.
Poor comparison.
Well, this will be morally problematic for you. That stuff doesn't originate with Vince McMahon. It originates with the film Triumph of Will, which is
Yeah.
the Nazi propaganda film. All the NFL shots were all developed by the director of Triumph of the Will. Like
No
those
shit.
propaganda.
Yeah.
I didn't even fucking know that. That's amazing. Wow.
That's
Yeah.
why.
I'm not, but then college
The
takes
more
from that
you know.
also.
Yeah.
And I'm not giving up college football because the Nazis are fucking assholes.
Here's another interesting thing about that Nazi film. Like that, I don't know if you guys have ever watched it, but
I have.
it's really interesting to watch. One, you just get to see how fucking crazy those people were. Like you can see in their faces how like zealous they were. And I think people should watch it all the time.
Well,
Yeah.
Another
Especially
thing you also
now.
have to watch with that movie also is that you have to remember, man, is that after World War One, the German culture was so fucking decimated. You know, I mean, the thing with it is the common people, I mean, they were just kind of like looking for some kind of hope. And unfortunately, Hitler gave that to them. You know, and I mean, everybody's like, you know, I think it was a thing, they were about to be bum rushed by communism, and Hitler was the one that came in, but he replaced it with horrible, you know, with fucking fascism, pretty much, you know? So, I mean, yeah, it's fucking crazy, man.
He blamed the Jews for their debt.
What's wild is just to sidetrack real quick, I've been listening to a podcast that's now a television show on Amazon Prime. It's called Lore. I've been listening to the Lore podcast. I haven't seen a single episode of the television show. I actually want to wait until I'm caught up with the podcast. There's one episode on his show that is fucking amazing. He talks about the great-great-grandson of Genghis Khan. And he did all this horrible shit to the point to where when he would conquer nations, he would build pyramids as these victory trophies. But all of the pyramids were built of the heads of all of the people he killed. So when he died, they put him in a grave. They put a jade tombstone cover over it that said, "Once again, when I awake, the world will tremble." What's crazy is that they went and a Russian archaeology team went in there, found the fucking gravestone. They removed it, and a day later is when Russia got invaded by Germany.
Whoa.
They continued to go and do all of these studies and all over the years and all of that shit, and they finally determined, they found his body in Uzbekistan, which that's what it is today, but they went back and actually gave him a proper Muslim burial back into his original grave, and the next day was the tide turn of Russia against the Nazis. That show is fucking amazing, man. This guy brings up so many little great factoids about stuff. I highly recommend.
So
it's
it's
fantastic.
a podcast, and
So-
then they're
This guy started it as a podcast. He was just an independent horror writer, and he started a podcast, and he goes through all of the folklore of shit you know. Like, I mean, he does the Jersey Devil all the way down to the Robert Dahl in New England and everything. He covers all the hotel that The Shining was based on.
Always with this shit you didn't know about it.
Yeah, and he goes and researches it to death to give you all of the actual factual or lore-related folklore history that's tied to it. They're only about 15 to 20 minutes apiece, they're fucking
is
great.
it still going on, or is it?
Yes, it's still going on, but that just goes to show you the power of podcasting now, because that guy actually spun this into being a television series, and I've heard several non-spoiler reviews of the Lore show that's on Amazon Prime, and they say it is fucking awesome.
I'm totally
really
down
good.
for like an At the Movies with Chad and Mark, where they're just sitting and talking to each other.
No, I'm going to feel really stupid because I always these guys are so well read and they know so much about this shit. I'm just sitting there and I'm like, yeah, it sucks.
Right.
Yeah, I love it.
But the thing about it is, it's like I maintain that all of us, like I recommend this show to people all the time. Like,
Oh,
you know,
we appreciate that.
I mean, I always listen to every episode. I love listening to it because, you know, even just going like, I put my nuts on that fucking movie. Like,
You listened to last week, didn't you?
but like that sort of thing, like there's style to it, there's entertainment to it. Like, you know, it's like saying that, you know, some bullshit intellectual like Richard Dawkins is more important than Sam Kinison. It's just not. You know, it's all levels of style. My style happens to be just to absorb a ton of information, think about it in a weird way, and spit it out. It's not any better. If it was better, if it was actually superior, I would be doing that for a living. You know?
Well, I mean, our show, I mean, is the way we visioned it. Is, I mean, we're sitting in a locker room talking about shit that we like, and, you know, we'll either take a shit on it. And look, there's some things we love that I know. Like there's sometimes, look, here's a prime example. It goes, I think Scott is a fucking lunatic for not liking Rogue One. But then again, Scott thinks that John is a lunatic because he likes a Vince Vaughn movie. That's a thing, you know? So, I mean, it's just our opinions, and it's just us bullshitting. You know, I mean, that's really what it is.
And then I'm always wondering, I don't care what you like or don't like. I just want to know why. You know, there's a film critic named Armand White who now writes for the National Review, and he's known as like a super troll. He fucking shit all over There Will Be Blood, which is a movie I really liked, and he heaped all this praise on top of the first G.I. Joe movie. And
really?
So now on the
I got to go read this.
now on the surface, you're like, this is insane, but he makes such phenomenal arguments that it makes you reconsider why he's thinking about it. And you're like, oh, actually, They Will Be Blood is pretty trite. It is actually kind of manipulating you in the way that every single indie film ever has. And so you start thinking about it, and you're like, oh, I can't, I can't not consider that argument. Also, what he does in his writing, he will often say, and here's a film that you've never heard of that deserves to be seen, that does what that guy tried to do better. And then his review of the G.I. Joe movie introduced a concept to me I had never considered, which is kinetic filmmaking, which is like when you're watching, like, say, a ball fly through the air in a movie, it needs to make physical sense. Whereas, like, the Transformer movies, they make no sense. And the reason why they're so dissatisfying is they're just banging around. And the G.I. Joe movie, he compared it to, like, Buster Keaton films, where there is a chain of events that flows and makes a physical logic. And so often I'm like, man, I really love this movie. Let me see how much Armand White hates it or doesn't. And he hated Blade Runner 2049. And I think his criticisms of it are very valid, but only made me really appreciate what I liked about the film more.
Right.
Yeah, well, sure.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, but the G.I. Joe movie, I know that movie is pretty much universally shit on.
I mean,
like,
it's I only watched it because of his review, and I still was like, man, this sucks.
God,
so even in that dude Armand White is way fucking smarter than me, like for sure, but it doesn't make him right about G.I. Joe,
right.
Yeah, I saw about half of it and I had to turn it off because I mean, dude, I was born in the 70s, but I consider myself an 80s kid. I mean, that's when when I can remember things. That's where I start coming back to. 1980, I was 6 years old. So now, all of those toys and all those things that are coming out, all those things marketed to me. I remember G.I. Joe is like, he's a fucking, it's
a real
Reagan,
American hero.
It's a Reagan era. It's a Reagan era property. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like if you go and watch the G.I. Joe movie, the animated one, you don't have to watch the whole movie. Just watch the 3-minute intro of that movie where Cobra attacks the Statue of Liberty. Yeah. And there's this whole big battle scene. It's excellent animation for its time. Corny background music and all that shit. But what I think is so fantastic at the end of the intro, after they blow the shit out of Cobra, kick their ass, they retreat to run away to fight for another day. The lead character goes and picks up an American flag and jetpacks all the way to the top of the the Statue of Liberty, so he can hold his flag out while everybody else is standing. Buy these toys.
Yeah.
But it's fucking great for its era.
And buy into patriotism too.
Yeah, sure. And that's the thing. Sometimes I feel myself growing a beard when I watch that shit.
To a certain extent, not to get too terribly political, but this is a awfully existential time in terms of looking and saying, well, what the fuck is patriotism? How can I be alone and thinking, are Nazis bad? They're bad, right?
Right.
And that's where we're at. That is, so you got to look back at your influences. And G.I. Joe was, I was taught about the Constitution and, this is what makes America America, freedom of this, that, and the other thing. And, it's an abstraction, but G.I. Joe kind of embodies that. And I think part of the problem with the movie is much like, and this is the thing that they've done with a lot of franchises. It's like Mission Impossible. It's like, well, if we're gonna really sell it, we have to actually make a character everyone knows and loves as an archetype is the actual villain, and that'll be the big reveal. And that's one of the many things with G.I. Joe. I was like, oh yeah, this. But I'll stick through it. I watched all the Transformers because I'm a student of CGI. I want to see what's possible. So I'll stick through a shit plot if there's something pretty to look at, even if it makes no physical sense.
Well, it's like Avatar. I hate that fucking movie. I can't stand it. But I will admit that, as far as being a technical achievement of its time, it's phenomenal.
Pretty in the theater.
Will I go see the new ones? No.
Yeah.
But I saw what I felt I needed to see out of the first one.
Right.
But, but it's it's a technical achievement without question.
Yeah. So I'll stick through those, but I'm gonna have to check that guy out because I mean,
I definitely want.
Yeah, I feel the same way
too.
about some of you guys' stuff. It's like even if I don't agree, I'm fascinated to hear your take down or respect to it. You know, and what's great is that for those of you that have not yet listened, Mark is a like very liberal California type, very well reasoned.
He's actually Canadian.
Yeah,
Oh,
so-
he's Canadian, but
Even
but
worse.
he's yeah. but he does embody what most people stereotype is a liberal California perspective,
Yeah.
and Chad is actually quite like libertarian in his views. And every once in a while, he'll just say, I'm just evaluate everything through a filter of, how many machine guns am I allowed to have, and how many shots will it take to take out this XYZ. Like,
Yeah, right.
and you often reference Good Will Hunting, but at the end of the day, you kind of are like Will Hunting. At the end of the day, it's like you can spit the liberal game, but you've got your own values that are much more in line with people that kind of listen to our show. You know what I mean? It's awesome. I love your podcast.
I mean, one of the things, if you'll notice, there's a key feature of our podcast is that we don't argue with each other.
Is that how it? I didn't know
Well,
that.
well,
I
we
think
don't
y'all
get-
disagree,
we disagree.
but y'all don't
Oh, we
argue.
disagree quite a bit.
We argue.
But
you
we-
guys just disagree.
Right.
But
true.
and I think what's interesting is like Mark's wife is a famous drag queen gender studies person. Like, I mean, she's hard left. I mean, like all of their friends and a lot of my friends too are like these gender nonconformists. Just
Right.
it's a totally different thing. And then my libertarianism really asserts itself when it's just like, do whatever you want. Leave me the fuck alone. I'd
Amen.
love to take maybe 8% more of my income home. That'd be fucking awesome. That'd be tremendous. Sort of thing. Like, look, a 30-round magazine. Let me explain it to you. It's not for going to war. Go to a range and load a magazine. Your fucking thumbs hurt after a while, and you can just do that at home with your fucking loader, and like you're ready to go. And and a lot of times, like this sort of like our really the way we present our opinions and like our manner of dress and stuff like that, it's all affectation. And another thing about Scary Thoughts, I don't know that people really pick up on it too much. It's really a story about two older men becoming friends. Because before Scary Thoughts started, the first episode was the first time I had ever sat down with Mark by myself, me and him. Like his wife and my wife are friends, and they came over for a dinner party, and like that Chris Rock joke where you're like, you like baseball? I like baseball. Like that sort of thing. And we sort of started talking about horror. And, he and I are both, when it comes to like producing art or content or whatever, we're pretty motivated. And he's the first creative partner I've ever had. Like I'm a writer, so you do that by yourself, basically. He's a musician, mostly makes music by himself. But he has more experience working. He's been in bands, so he works with people more. But for me, having this creative partner who, like, our entire friendship has unfolded on the show, so you can hear it, as we
No doubt.
Yeah.
And he's one of my favorite people in the world. And if we were on a fucking dating site, we would have never been matched up. You know what I mean? And I think that I would hope that more than like the interest in horror or whatever, I hope that like people who hear that show realize like, hey, look, you can be friends with people who are radically different than you.
No doubt.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing, and social media is definitely a big perpetrator of that, man. I mean, dude, people now just want to be fucking dicks just to be dicks. And
totally.
Joe Rogan says it, and I really want to believe in his theory. He said, Facebook and social media is such a young thing. We're kind of watching it as a prepubescent teenager right now. So it's an obnoxious fucking dick that doesn't want to do, wants to rail against everything. And hopefully after, when it hits its maturity, we can move past this shit, man. I mean, dude, the keyboard anonymity, dude, is just fucking ridiculous.
I'll go
man.
even further, man.
It sucks.
I think social media is Moloch the Destroyer, man.
Yep.
I think it is.
Absolutely.
I think it is a terrible curse upon this world, and it's a type of technology like nuclear energy that could have been beautiful. We could all be like running around in electric cars right now, plugged into these like totally safe nuclear facilities. but we're not. We have to worry about some fat dickhead with a bowl cut blasting L.A. with a missile, you know?
Yeah, right.
And that shit is infuriating. Social media is the same way. Like, it's should I stop?
No,
keep going.
It is only for one thing. It's for creating ad revenue. Like, that's all it exists for. Like, it's entirely developed for that. And like, if you read Ryan Holiday's book, Trust Me, I'm Lying: Confessions of a Media Manipulator, he's my favorite marketing guy, and I do that for a living. And you realize that hatred gets more clicks generates more ad revenue. Divisiveness generates more ad revenue.
Our buddy from Zartome from Not Real Radio, he says it all the time.
Another excellent show.
He says if I do a show that basically is taking a shit on somebody, if it causes some kind of fucking controversy, I get clicks out the ass. To the point, their show rather is very, very local. And the thing with it is they pull out a lot of stuff with local personalities. And Zartome is probably one of the most outspoken, most honest guys that I know. And he lays this shit out, and it's funny. Like, he calls me sometimes, and he's like, does my opinion really mean that much? You know, he's like, I say one thing, and he's like, man, I'm getting phone calls and people beating on my fucking door that want to kick my ass and all of this stuff. He's like, man, it's fucking crazy. But he's right. He said, if I do something that's nice, that talks about regular shit, nobody pays attention.
Yeah.
If I'm a fucking divisive asshole, I get clicks, telephone calls, feedback, all of that shit.
Yeah,
that's it.
It's like I did that year. I did this thing where I wrote a blog post every day for a year, and the more angry the post was, it was dramatically. I mean, it was dramatic. I mean, it would be sometimes a 10 to 100 times spike in reading, and definitely time on page and stuff like that, than if I wrote something kind of nice, unless it was something abnormally positive or whatever. So that seems to be the other thing, like kittens and positivity or just rage. It like sells for the internet.
Well, I think that's the thing. Everybody always says that. Why can't I just get kittens and positivity? What underneath is lurking the fact that they actually want to be pissed off and they want to be infuriated, or they want to make somebody look like an asshole or whatever. Hey, man, fuck, I'm guilty of it. I do it all the time. I troll the piss out of people all day long.
I feel like, though, all they got to do, and I know I say it, all they got to do, but, like, for real, just pull a plug for an hour or for a day and just see their dramatic change in people, how they act towards one another, how they act.
Yeah. No doubt.
Anywhere.
Yeah, you know? My goal for the latter part of this year has been to become radically uninformed about the political happenings of our country. So I don't watch the news at all. I could give a fuck. I don't listen to political podcasts anymore. It's like that old Bill Hicks joke: more war, famine, death, AIDS.
Right.
Look out the window, and it's like
crickets.
Yeah. And I found that, dude, my fucking job is nightmarishly stressful, and adding on top of the nightmarishly stressful bullshit product that I choose to consume, like all this content, I cut that shit out. Do great at work now. It's fucking awesome.
My stress levels have reduced 50% by turning off the news, and I did that over a year ago. It's fantastic.
Yeah. I do social media. I'm the perpetrator of this, but I love my job so much that I don't even consider it a job. I just get up and go to work, you know. Yeah. But the political crap, nonsense, infighting, just all of that stuff, like I literally have to, like, you know, because I have to go through things and find find things.
What's trending?
You know, I have to be on top of that. Yeah. The problem is a lot of things that trend or whatever, or that in news, or that negativity. So I have to literally pull myself out of it to say, what are you doing? Don't look at that. You go enjoy the work that you do. Go do the enjoyable stuff. Don't concentrate on this stuff.
Yeah.
It's the terrible part.
Yeah, Alan Moore says that you and I, like people like you and I, people who work in marketing, we're the true black magicians. Like in a very real, literal, Aleister Crowleyan sense.
Right.
We were doing black magic, and like in Crowley's Thelema, you know, magic it's neutral, right? So you choose what you do with it, and I think like people like us, professionals like us, should be cognizant of like almost like the spiritual force of like changing that direction. And so lately, like if you look at you guys, you follow me on Facebook, I think, or something like that. Like you've probably seen a change in the arc of this. Like, it's all silly all the time now.
No doubt.
You know, and it used to be, you know, about a mixed bag. Sometimes I would be like, fuck this dude, and this is why. And I found that, I mean, it's probably because I've gone super gay with all this yoga, but, you know, but, you know, I found that, like, my interactions with people and the way people see me has started to change. And I found it to be incredibly beneficial. And think about that for your company. Think about that for your band. Think about that for anything you do. Is like, you can chase the utopic vision of the world that you want.
I try to explain this to my father all the time. My dad is a 70-year-old guy from the suburbs, and, you know, he is grown up his entire life conservative. He is a conservative guy. You know, a guy, our current political climate, no matter where it is, because it's beyond Trump. It's the whole fucking thing. It just goes to show you that life, you know, especially social media, has jumped into all of this shit, and now everybody is nothing but loud and screaming and pissed off at what's going on. Well, my dad, he relates to that because he's been a loud guy that's been pissed off, and he feels the need to scream about it. So, you know, I tell him that all the time. I mean, dude, I'm watching him interact sometimes. Well, not anymore because I've unfollowed everything. But I've watched him on WWL's website, which is local news, or Fox or CNN or whatever, and he goes and lays these fucking comments out there. He is guilty of the shit we're talking about. He is out there to bludgeon the fuck out of people and make somebody look like a dumbass because they think a certain way. And I don't think about Dad any less than that. I love him. He's my hero. He's a successful businessman. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's just his opinions, even though some of them I may disagree with. Some of them I do agree with. Yeah. But the thing with it is, I keep trying to explain to him, I'm like, dude, my last name and your last name are the same fucking thing. You don't know which one of these customers out here are looking at this shit. And I'm the asshole out there on the front line. Yep. So, man, what you're saying is, well, I'm retired. No, dude, it has nothing to do with that, man. Yeah. Dude, you got to fucking chill out.
The internet is written in pen.
Well, dude, go make a goddamn fake profile if you want to be an asshole. Go do it.
What's interesting to me about Czar and Not Real Radio is that he is sort of the poster boy.
He's going to love this because we're talking about him. He loves to hear about himself.
Fine. I loved his opinions of our show. I thought it was so great because he's like, yeah, it's smart, but then I think he said something like in Idiocracy, but like they talk like fags, they're all retarded. And I just like the wrong kind of person would have been really fucking bummed out about that. But I feel like that dude, like, you can pick up that he's seeing the world as it is, like a Chris Hedges type character, you know, and he's speaking like the truth that comes from his brain.
Oh, totally.
And it was fucking hilarious, man. Like I loved it.
Mark is one of a kind, man. He's fucking awesome.
And what's great about him is that he's the poster child for like allergy to capitalism. You know, this whole notion of don't tell me what I have to market, what I have to talk about. That's fucking bullshit, and you're all sheep. They live, et cetera, and so forth. But what's great is my thinking is invoking the great Bill Hicks once again when he's talking about anyone who works in advertising should kill themselves. And he goes, and I know what you fucking advertisers are thinking. You're thinking you're going for that anti-ad dollar, Bill.
Yeah, right.
Fucking kill yourself. You know, like, at the end of the day, even hating on capitalism has its followers. And that's my favorite.
It's a brand, dude. Yeah. Like being anti-capitalist is absolutely a brand, because the reality is, like, none of the actions of any anti-capitalist are at all going to end capitalism. Like, I mean, if you read like Francis Fukuyama's like End of History, like, it's late stage neoliberalism. It's here. Basically, everybody shifted over to it. The option is theocratic bullshit. You know, like, that's the only other like thing. Nobody wants that except for idiots. You know, of all stripes, you know, like, anytime like somebody's at the top telling young people to go off themselves for their own ideas and maintaining their power, it's a bad thing, right?
Right.
And you know, like, again, Ryan Holiday just wrote this book called The Perennial Seller, and he makes this whole comment, he makes this arc that, like, hey, look, being successful isn't bad, and sometimes if you like lean into something that's a little bit popular, you can bring it across your whole message or whatever. I mean, that's why we did Stranger Things to kick off Scary Thoughts. Like that's exact reason why we chose that franchise.
Oh yeah, because you knew it was going to draw. It was going to draw clicks. I mean, sure.
And then you can come in and listen to our breakdown of Raw, an obscure French cannibal movie.
I mean, one of our breakthrough things where we just got lucky. We lined it up to where when they announced that Sony was had gone over and brought Spider-Man over to Marvel, and they were doing the team up. It seemed that we got the news of that happening broke like 5 minutes after we did the show, and Scott got it published pretty quickly because of that news, because it was so monumentally huge. And I think to this date, that's our biggest episode.
That's our biggest, ridiculously biggest episode.
Well, I've been,
like it had like something like 1,500 views or something shit.
Yeah,
something ridiculous.
We were
ridiculous for the time that when we had between 10 and 20 views.
Yeah.
We were on top of that shit chiefly because I was like, it can happen. I believe it can happen. I was like Dorothy wanting to click the heels to go home.
Well,
place, right time.
Speed to market's huge, man. I got that whole idea. There's a documentary that came out a long time ago called Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control.
Oh yeah,
and
I never saw it.
It's such a weird documentary. Like it just follows these weirdos that have ideas of doing things. And one dude, his whole thing was, why send a 100-pound robot to Mars when you can send 100 1-pound robots to Mars? Because eventually they're going to get it. And that whole concept of just being fast and first. I mean, man, it's like, but then your job gets in the way. You got kids to pick up.
Yeah. Well, geez, man, we've run, man. We've had so much fun talking here. But look, there's a couple of other things I just want to ask about or cover real quick.
Okay.
First of all, we did talk about Thor, and you say you're excited to see this, man. How do you feel about The Last Jedi, the new Star Wars movie?
Man, I'm on board for all of it. Like, I'll never not be into it.
Yeah, as you're wearing your Star Wars Boba Fett tank top to the studio here. So
yeah.
Stranger Things 2. Gonna watch that?
Oh yeah. I was gonna watch it here, but I'm on vacation in New Orleans. There's just so much shit to do. I'm not gonna watch TV when I can run around. But if I was at home, I would have already watched it.
And this is the last one, something that I wanted to bring up because I was extremely dissatisfied last weekend with the Walking Dead season 8 premiere. Are you watching it still?
I'm done.
You're done, huh?
Yeah. The moment you bring in a shitty CGI tiger into anything, I'm done. I'm done with you.
Oh, so that's what killed it for you. I didn't have a problem with the shitty CGI tiger. I think that it looked very good for TV, and I think it's at least true to the comic book.
I mean, I kind of joke about that, but I don't know.
This last episode, basically, if there is a way to to mystically create retardation and blast it into somebody's fucking brain, it did that to me. I felt like a fucking dummy watching that last episode.
Incidentally, I thought the second season of Fear the Walking Dead was really solid. There were some weird new ideas that crept into it that I had just kind of lumped it in with the regular Walking Dead show. I was like, okay, this is just run its course.
Yeah.
They do introduce some novel zombie killing and whatnot, which is what you're after,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, can you spoil it by elaborating in a couple of sentences what you mean? Because I'm still not inclined to watch it. Just because Walking Dead feels like a fucking homework assignment at this point.
Well, get ready to watch it because they said I think next season they're going to cross over the Fear the Walking Dead
it's
and
only
the regular.
It's only going to be one episode. It's most likely, spoiler alert, going to be Abraham.
Yeah, they say Abraham's going to show up in the Fear the Walking Dead as if it's kind of a prequel appearance to his regular appearance.
Yeah, because I'm just going to. Are you still watching Fear?
No,
okay,
I mean I don't care about
ruin
spoilers.
it. Whoever the antagonists are, whoever in this last season, they're going to Texas for whatever reason, and Abraham is in Texas.
Oh, and you might even see Eugene in it also, because if you remember, he was guarding Eugene because Eugene.
This is supposedly going to go when Abraham has a family.
Oh,
so the reason he meets Eugene is because his family gets killed in ABC.
Okay.
So
well,
it's a prequel.
My problem is, and it just goes to show you the Walking Dead fan base. It's like any fan base, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
It's to the point now to where they will defend ignorant shit to the hilt. And now I'm starting to see.
Me,
no. I'm not directing that at you. I mean, I'm sitting there looking at an article and it says why Rick didn't kill Negan in the season opener, and everybody comments underneath, because of bad writing, and it was absolutely the fucking truth. I mean, dude,
Yeah.
So horrible.
I think, like, for me, I often imagine, like, if characters in The Walking Dead had Cormac McCarthy character competence, how different and more pleasurable would it be? You know,
that's how it started.
My biggest thing with
yeah.
that show is I've always felt like they're the lowest common denominator of survivors.
Mm-hmm.
Anything, you know, like why didn't they shoot them? Because they're idiots. They're the idiot survivors. Everything they touch, they turn to crap.
Idiots shoots
Everything
first,
they do.
ask questions later.
As far as I'm concerned, I mean, if you want to talk about the idiot survivors, I mean, that's another thing that's the fault of bad writing. As far as I'm concerned, the only ones that should be living at this point are Rick, Michonne, Carl, Carol, and fucking Daryl. As far as I'm concerned, they're the only ones that show the right shit to do things.
Yeah.
And everybody else does dumb shit. But this last episode, I mean, you show up on a guy's front doorstep. Now, this is where I'm fucked up. You have 3 locations that you're trying to defend. Okay, you have 3 different ones. You got Hilltop. You've got the what's the name of their
Alexandria.
You got Alexandria, and then potentially you have this group of all females that are out on the coast.
That's 4.
So, all right. So what's the other one?
The Kingdom.
All right, the Kingdom. I'm sorry. So yeah, remove the women colony because they just went and took their guns and fucked them over. So you have those 3 things now. Between the Kingdom and Hilltop and Alexandria, you're still, the way the impression I've gotten from the show is that you're still undermanned compared to Negan's forces. Now, Negan's got one fucking stronghold with a ton of dudes, a ton of guns, a ton of food, all this bullshit. So the thing with it is that you show up on his doorstep, and what, you're just going to send him a message so you can toy with him and just shoot out his windows? Fuck you. Kill him. And then Negan the whole time is sitting there with an army behind him in this building. And while everybody's shooting up, he doesn't have enough fucking smarts to roll out and tell someone, look, dude, get these motherfuckers out of here. Or not even that. They don't have the right mind to say, Jesus Christ, somebody's shooting up the buildings, arm up and let's get out of here and fuck them up.
The tactical aspects, look, basically what The Walking Dead started out as is something, it's like a zombie movie meets Hateful Eight. You'd have these really intense exchanges of dialogue that would escalate, and then you'd have these spasms of violence, whether it's zombie-induced or with each other, right? And then at some point, they introduce Negan, who is arguably the embodiment of a Quentin Tarantino shit-talking guy with fucked up sense. Hang on.
Yeah.
And then they started adopting lost storytelling capability. Like, everyone became dumb. Like, it's like every other character is in Lost. They did the nonlinear narrative where you see Rick as an old guy, and then they cut to him looking over a dead body. Who is it? I guess we'll find out at the end.
We know.
But I was just well, I don't. I thought it was him standing over the grave of someone that died in the season finale of last season.
It is.
Okay. All right. Well, because now some people are saying that it's actually a flash forward to the end of this season, and that it could be, who is it?
Yeah,
is it
Lincoln came out and said that it was it's Abraham and Glenn.
Oh.
See, I don't see why in the fuck we even have to go here. The comics never done that. It's been a linear story that goes straight on.
I understand.
Here is the real fucking insult of that opening episode, though. So look, they roll in, they shoot up fucking Negan's pad, right, and all that bullshit. Well, what happens is the guy who was the leader of Hilltop, this guy Gregory, which I'm sure you're familiar with the character, what Negan's going to do is he's going to try to make the play. He sends Gregory out because he apparently hasn't realized that it's now Maggie running the Hilltop instead of this guy Gregory, and he underestimates the situation by still thinking that Gregory has some type of hold over these people. So he sends Gregory out and he says, okay, look, if everybody from Hilltop, if you guys go back home and you put down your guns and you leave everything alone and you just get in your car and drive away now, there'll be 0 repercussions. No fucking shit from Big Bad Negan and all that stuff. So they go through, and that's when Rick unleashes hell, sound, and fury on his ass, with opening up on the whole building with the machine guns and all that shit. Well, then they do their grand retreat, because what the tactic is, roll in, get a bunch of cars, weld some armor onto it to where we can use it as barricades.
Mad Max.
And then Daryl and Carol and all the other ones are leading in a zombie horde. So they hook onto a horde. As soon as the horde appears, look, we're going to jump in the cars and fucking roll out and let the horde swarm this motherfucker. So they go through and do all that shit, right? So Gregory is still alive during all this firefighting and all. So the priest, Father Gabriel, decides he's going to jump out of the car and try and save Gregory. So he jumps out and all that shit, and he goes and runs inside of this trailer. So now there's a trailer outside with zombies everywhere and all this shit. Negan is just made to look like a complete, cunt. They punched him in the fucking mouth, punched him in the nuts, and kicked him down the fucking stairwell. Now, here's the
why didn't they shoot him?
Because they didn't shoot him. Because Rick needs to sit there and have a James Bond villain dialogue with him instead of going, hey, dude, as soon as Negan walks out there and gets the shit, open up on this motherfucker. So they didn't do that. So now that they've emasculated Negan and made him look like a fucking, dickwad, the fucking priest is inside of a trailer with a machine gun. And in the darkness you hear, I hope you got your shitting pants on, because you're going to need them. Dude, fuck you. Open up on him. And if you don't open up on him in his moment of weakness, grab the fucking butt of your gun and beat the fuck out of him. This priest has been made, was introduced as a bitch, and then he's become hard-boiled throughout the entire series. He's a strong son of a bitch now, and he's gone through a lot of different character arcs to where he's betrayed them multiple times, but he realizes, man, look, I was wrong, and this is community. And I need to stick through this thing, and he becomes a strong character that's pretty hard-boiled. Dude, I got zombies horde knocking on the doors, and I'm worried about Negan, who just got his balls kicked through his asshole? Fuck you, dude. It's just dumb writing, man. It's just so stupid.
Yeah. I guess we'll find out on the next episode, because that was how it ended.
Well, I'm going to give it a chance tonight, and I'm going to see what their explanation is. And if their explanation is no good, I'm out. I'm out after this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm seriously
I started
out.
watching this show because of you, goddammit.
Hey, look, I loved it. I loved the comic book when it first came out. We know the parallels and all that shit that I had and all, but dude, I mean, the show is just dumb now. Stupid.
I can't think of any TV shows that I'm like, other than Stranger Things, which I just thought was just so well done. I can't think of anything I'm like super excited to see, or I don't really follow anything, and not because I'm trying not to. I just.
I know you hate cartoons, but Rebels, I love it.
I get it. It's cartoon actor voices. I mean, even in the Death Note series, which I thought was remarkable, there's fucking voices, man.
Game of Thrones, you don't watch that show?
I'm just so far behind on
Westworld?
I did watch the first season of Westworld. I'm excited to see the second season of that whenever that comes out.
Yeah, 5 years from now.
Yeah,
that'll be
I mean, that's why I didn't even mention it. It's like it barely considered on. Who knows if we'll all be here by then.
Ozark?
My wife loved it. I just haven't watched it. I'm doing this thing right now where I'm trying to read 100 books this year.
Oh, that's,
And I'm on book 92. And so...
yeah, you're at the finish line,
I'm at the finish line. I can't be fucking around with Ozark.
No, right. It'll always be there.
I was reading it to get ready for our episode about it, and and I ended up watching that goddamn Death Note show, and it's like 30 episodes long, and it took me over a month to read it, and it put me so far behind. I was like, no Ozark, none.
It is no small book either. That book's over 1,000 pages. So I mean, that's like a fucking Game of Thrones novel onto its own.
Yeah. Okay. That we excuse you.
Yeah.
Cool.
But
Well, do we have anything to add, or anything to add here before we end the show?
Any movie we should all be?
The movies or books?
I mean, since we're on we're on a movie podcast,
either.
Any movie that we should go see?
Man,
that you would recommend?
That's a tough one. I mean, Blade Runner was obvious. That was something I really quite enjoyed. I thought Raw was particularly good. The horror film Raw. And one of the reasons why I liked it, it was just so non-American. Like, and I don't mean to shit on American film either. I think American film is the greatest film at all, but I don't like unnecessary exposition. You even saw it in Blade Runner. Like when they zoom in on the bones and they're like, they explain what you're looking at. And if you're not a moron, you know what you're looking at. Like, like that number means it's a replicant. And they don't. So, like, what's really cool about Raw is it has all these, like, French film is just very obscure. It deserves its reputation, I think. And there's all this exposition that happens in the film that is not explained. But if you're paying attention, you get it. And so like I really quite liked it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. I mean, I actually had a
didn't
lot
ask
to
you.
work on.
I didn't ask you.
Okay, never mind.
What did you like? What do you
What a fuck.
I don't know that I can take any more John recommendations.
Right.
I-
Okay.
Well, look,
Don't-
you do the same thing to John that
Yeah.
we do to you. We just
Yeah.
don't pay attention.
So I have another recommendation. I know you guys are all musician, or you have a lot of musician fans.
Yeah.
Harley Flanagan from the Cro-Mags biography demands to be a movie. It's like the biography Please Kill Me meets The Warriors meets like
Wow.
I mean it's like all late 70s, early 80s New York hardcore, and the stories in that book, if a third of them are true, it's still unbelievable. And and a lot of them, like I've looked around, a lot of them check out. Like that book is incredible. It's probably my favorite book of the year.
What's it called again?
Hardcore Life by Harley Flanagan of the Cro-Mags.
Cool.
Yeah.
Stranger Things 2, I binge watched it Friday.
It's
So
worth it.
yeah,
As good or better than season 1.
I think it's better.
Really?
But the Scott asterisk here, it could be really fucking terrible.
No, I'm 6 in, and I think it's better so far.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it's
This is my only
Good.
spoiler that I asked for. Do they use Dungeons and Dragons again to fucking fight shit?
yes.
They do?
Yes.
Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, this is one of the greatest TV shows ever. Like Kevin Smith movies that speak to me.
Yeah.
Any kid that uses a fucking D&D player's handbook to defeat shit proves once again that pencil and paper gamers will save the world from a fucking apocalypse.
I
just
totally agree.
know.
I mean, the
we
other
just
thing,
know.
the other thing about like being a pencil and paper gamer, like a D&D guy, is you've internalized a logical operating system that rewards heroism and intelligence.
Yeah.
Yep.
And,
And I will say, there's one. You know how Stranger Things borrows from a lot of '80s culture.
Yeah.
They don't bend over backwards to point to it, but I will give you one homage. It's in it. That's basically an episode. Band of the Hand. Don't know if anyone's seen.
that
but-
movie's fantastic.
Yep.
So great.
There's a.
That
yeah.
is awesome.
There's a throwback
I
to
love
that.
Band of the Hand. That's
Yeah.
a fucking great movie.
I don't know that one.
Gloriously horrible.
Well,
it's
Michael
about
Mann.
it's about a group of kids that are like criminals, and they're all juvenile delinquents, but like they've been arrested and they're doing time for like horrible shit.
Yeah.
And what happens is it's 5 of them, and there's a old like an old Vietnam vet. And he's not an Anglo. I think he's Hispanic or something,
I think
isn't
so,
he?
yeah.
Yeah, well, what happens is that he comes in and he teaches these kids honor and heroism, and they're called the Band of the Hand, is the fact that he's the palm and the kids are the 5 units of the hand.
This
And they're
sounds awesome.
And it was one of Michael Mann's
Red
first
Dawn
movies.
meets The Principal.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, it's fucking great,
That's
dude.
great.
Exactly.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. Good times.
So I'm really that's great. A Band of the Hands in there, and if we use
an
D&D,
homage,
if we
like I said.
use D&D again to defeat a true supernatural occurrence, as far as I'm concerned, top 3 of one of the greatest shows ever.
Yep.
So might be so great I might not even watch it. So there it is. All right. Hey, look, Chad, we appreciate you coming on, man. It's always a pleasure, man. We love it when you come back and visit home.
This is a key part of my home vacation.
Cool, man.
So-
Awesome,
This show
dude.
could have been another 2.5 hours, man.
Oh,
Easy.
no
Yeah.
doubt. We could have kept on going on. So, but yeah, we'll do it next time, man. Definitely. And I think Lady and I are talking about doing a visit to Cali for a honeymoon or something.
Oh, you
so.
should come out.
Yeah, we'll have to pop out and
we'll
hang
do
out.
it up. Oakland is a bit of a wasteland where we live.
That's right. I love Mad Max.
So, you'll love it. You'll love where we are.
In fact, I might try to figure out a way to sneak on some tire armor onto the airplane. We'll Doof Warrior it up.
We have a lot of our neighborhood is just basically tent cities and
Oh.
it's like tent cities and warehouses where like Burning Man people build their infrastructure. So you look around and it's essentially people who look like extras from The Walking Dead mumbling around in heroin dazes, and then an art car shooting fire will go by. I mean, it's kind of badass.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
What kind of car do you drive?
I do not drive a car.
You don't drive a car,
Yeah,
so
I
I say we can go rent something like a fucking Pulsar or something, and we'll Doof Warrior that bitch up. Put a couple of half stacks on the roof, sound the hood, and jam on some power cords. Fuck, I'm ready to go.
Let's do
I'll
it.
give you my GoPro.
All right, well, look, definitely check out Mark, Kate, and Chad Lott over on Scary Thoughts. You can subscribe there. And look, like we ask you, man, if you're a true fan of their show, which we're pretty sure you'll become one, their show's excellent. Man, leave them a review and leave them only 5 stars. Don't be like a fucking dick and leave 3 for us like somebody did. You know,
at least they reviewed us.
Our average is still running high. You know, we're still at 4.5, but some penis only gave us 3 stars.
What an unhappy human.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, you know, it's another thing of social media creeping in and, you know, I'm going to fuck these guys with their perfect rating. Fuck them.
I got a new show planned, too, that is probably going to be a little bit more on the esoteric, yogic, spiritual side. It's called Earth. It's going to be called Earth Retrograde.
Uh-huh.
And so, like Mercury Retrograde, you know, but basically like exploring the idea that we are in the age of darkness known as Kali Yuga. And it is a time of both misery and pain and accelerating consciousness. So
cool, man. Well, we'll definitely look into that one too. Honestly, I could listen to you talk for hours, man. Yeah. So I love that shit.
You know who doesn't feel that way? My wife.
John and I are actually working on something right now. In fact, something you know about. We have in the works also. It'll be a separate podcast.
It is very cool.
We're doing some. We're actually having a discussion right after Halloween about some things that are going to be attainable. So we'll tell you about that in a little bit.
I'm not working on anything new, so...
Oh, Scott's going to be working with us.
He's not Ginger and the Bee?
That's not new.
Slackaduster?
It's not new. It's
no
not
new
album?
project?
No, it's not a new project.
All right. Okay.
That's all right, man. Scott's going to jump on with us. You know, be the same thing.
Right.
He'll disagree with us and we'll yell at him. So it'll work out good.
Yeehaw.
But hey, make sure to also check out Not Real Radio, Czar, Alley, and Mayday. Check them out. Give them the same treatment that you would give us. You know, we'd certainly appreciate
Except that 3-star person.
Yeah, that's it. Except that 3-star person.
Probably Czar.
Also, look, we have a right. So, also, we have a new group on Facebook. It's Popcorn, Piss, and Vinegar, or PPVGuys. Please look us up there. You can join on there and join in the discussion. We've actually been getting some activity with some people that have joined up and they've contributed. We've talked back to them and started a couple little conversations. Absolutely great. Also, YouTube. Check out our channel there, the way we do episodes. And ppvguys.com, where you can listen to previous episodes. Thanks for listening. End scene.